The microbiome test kit and standard process really gives you an opportunity to get insight into what's going on in your body and how that can affect your health overall. There's a lot of information that I want to go through today, and I'm going to try to, you're going to see a lot of slides go by quickly. It's just because of the amount of time we have, but if you have questions, we can get into details as we go through this. So as Dr. Claps mentioned, the standard process is a supplement company that many of you have already taken. It's been around for over 90 years. We have an organic farm in Palmyra, Wisconsin, and we actually were the first company that ever create a multivitamin. So there's a lot of history there, a lot of rich experience and clinical expertise that comes along with that. The tool that Dr. Claps from Riverwalk Health can actually use to understand exactly what's going on in your body and give you better insight to how you can see things. So disclaimer, there's these long disclaimers that you see sometimes. I'm just going to use this disclaimer slide just to remind you that I'm not here to give you anything that's going to treat or cure anything that may be going on. It's just, this is educational purposes for you to work more closely with the office here to understand really what may be going on with you and your health. I just want to thank the researchers and PhDs and medical doctors that helped put these slides together that I helped organize. Dr. Martindale and Dr. Gunam, a lot of clinical experience, which we'll kind of get into. And this is just going to be a quick summary, which we're going to get into. And I'll just, go past this one real quick. The big three, though, everything that we're going to talk about with the microbiome test, and you hear gut-brain axis, is talking about the bacterial environment in your gut, in your large intestine for the most part. There's some bacteria in your small intestine, but mostly in your large intestine. But so the test is going to give you insight to what that bacterial environment is, and also fungi environment is. But it does not address the stomach, the gallbladder, and the pancreas. And those are the big three of needing enzymes, the proper pH in your stomach, and bile flow with your gallbladder. And that's really where we're working more closely with Dr. Claps. You'll be able to get insight on how that relates to the bacterial balance and the fungal balance in your large intestines, which the test will give you insight on. So health implications of the microbiome. It essentially, I'm going to slip through some of these just because it affects everything. The gut is a central, you've heard of the gut-brain axis, the second brain. It affects your skin, it affects your brain, it affects the pH of your mouth, it affects the amount of inflammation in your body, it affects hormones, it affects blood sugar, it affects essentially everything that you can think of is surrounded and has research connected to heart issues, not just because people think about microbiome, they think about, well, I have bloating, I have diarrhea, I have constipation. Those are the things that they're thinking about, but they may not be thinking about obesity and hypertension. But the gut balance, bacterial balance in your body is directly related to the hormones, the inflammation, and the ability for you to actually manage your weight effectively. So this is just more research that every one of these points, there's research studies and multiple research studies, dozens for each, that is associated with some type of diagnosis. Again, we can go more into depth with this, but this essentially, if you can think of a diagnosis, there is some correlation. It may not be directly correlated, but there is an association with the gut microbiome can be affecting inflammation, toxicity, or hormones, which may be associated with a diagnosis, which will give you more of an opportunity that you can control your own health by actually addressing your gut health and the big three. So these are gradient, it's all on a gradient level, and I left Shutterstock on there. I just grabbed it from there, just to kind of give you a visual. What I showed you the slide before, those are like diagnoses. People are essentially, a lot of people these days in society are waiting for the diagnosis. Well, I'm celiac now. Now I should start to make changes in my health. Or now I have diabetes. Now I should start making changes in my health. But in actuality, the microbiome test is going to give you insight into this gradient much earlier than you would ever had before without this information. It'll give you an insight to be able to make changes now, so that way you don't ever, it'll help mitigate and prevent from actually moving more towards the diagnosis category. So just keep that in mind. And these are just some other studies that are out here, how the microbiome is associated with infections essentially. And there's, I don't want to get into this, but essentially if you have increased amount of antibiotic use, will increase the likelihood of you actually having infections and death, essentially is what it comes down to. This is another study that's showing as far as for pregnancy, For 189 articles were reviewed for this. Essentially, the nuts and bolts of it, if you took probiotics and you had a healthy microbiome, you had less likelihood of gestational diabetes, you had better lipid profiles, you had a better weight while you were pregnant, and you had better glucose and less likely to have preeclampsia, and you had lower inflammation in your body just by having a probiotic and the right probiotic in your diet. So can daily supplements, probiotics be used for prevention of disease in healthy people? And this is just a study showing that people that took probiotics were less likely to get sick. That's the simple short here. And this is another one as far as like healthy microbiome and short chain fatty acids, which is a production and an output of having a healthy microbiome, increases your ability to be strong, vital, have energy and muscle strength overall. The mechanisms for immune system it talks about, so susceptibility for disease. You know, we may actually be sterilizing ourselves to actually increase our susceptibility for infection. The more that we are over essentially sanitizing things, including our skin, which we're supposed to have this protective layer of bacteria on our skin, will actually potentially increase the likelihood of us gaining an infection. And that's not a blanket statement. There's obviously, you know, different variations of that, you know, being effective, but obviously we need to sanitize. But if we're doing it for everything and we're living in a sanitary environment when we're used to having bacteria on a regular basis, it changes the profile of our microbiome. It can actually make us more susceptible to health. And there's a lot of research actually with each one of these things, but we don't have time to get into that. So the gut metabolites is affecting the brain. That's CNS's central nervous system, our brain, and our overall health. So that's really correlated with chiropractic care and you know, working with the office here, because it goes both ways. So if we have a healthy microbiome, it's going to help us have a healthier central nervous system and brain. And if you have a healthy brain, if you get chiropractic care, it's going to help you actually have the better potential of having a healthy microbiome. So it goes both ways. So there's a gut microbiome access. There's so many studies out there now that are talking about association with the health of the gut and anxiety, stress, depression, OCD, and many other things. So this is just another study talking about the more antibiotic use, you have an increased likelihood of catching C. diff. And there's there's an infection that can be deadly for some people that go into hospitals if they have antibiotic use on a regular basis, or they have Nexium or PPIs. There's research shows that if you're on those type of inactive medications, you're more likely to catch that very bad infection when you're in the hospital. So, you know, the bottom line is support a healthy microbiome, so you're less likely to get that. They've shown that, and not to get too technical, but there's about over 1,000 species, different types of species of gut bacteria in our body. With one dose of broad spectrum antibiotics, that can actually decrease to around 200 or so. That just decreases the diversity, and overall health impact, you know, is, you know, detrimental. So there's, you know, a lot of research as far as like, you know, what we were back in the day, and as far as, you know, what, you know, antibiotic use and other medications, or just unhealthy lifestyle is implicated as far as affecting our microbiome, which is, it's not necessarily always the lifestyle's fault. It may just be that our gut bacteria got affected at some point during our life, which it had a cascade effect on our body, on our hormones and everything else, and inflammation, which we're not able to control unless we actually get the gut in check, essentially. So, you know, just more, I'm going to skip through some of these. So germ theory or germ therapy, they're actually germ therapy. There's a lot of things that they're doing now as far as even fecal transplants, which, you know, not everybody's really a big fan of, but they're doing it, you know, at some really well-known universities and places that are having amazing results. But you don't have to get to that point. So the whole point with a microbiome test is to not get there. Where you actually need it because you're on, you know, the deathbed, is to get this insight so you can actually make changes in your life before you ever get there. And so I'm going to skip past the status check. I'm going to go through the biome health background. founded by Dr. Gunum, one of the world's most foremost researchers in gut health. And we have over 450 peer-reviewed publications, 23,000 citations in scientific literature, and 25 million over than that for the National Institutes of Health. That's who we are working with to essentially, with this test, to get the right recommendations for standard process and Medicare products to make changes for your health. So this is just giving you some insight to what to expect, so that you're starting to see what is inside of this test kit. And it's not a stool test that you would have to do in the office. The office is very happy about that. But you do it at home, and you don't have to grab massive amounts of vials. It's essentially just a swab that you get from the toilet paper. So it's a really non-invasive and very easy to take home and take care of the test all on your own. And this is essentially the contents. It's just a swab kit. We can open it up later, and it's self-mailing envelope and everything in there. And you get a gut report from that. It takes about 4 to 6 weeks, just as far as like processing time to get the results back. So Dr. Claps in the office here would help with essentially the time between the time you take the test and what you can do to make changes between now and then, because there are, like I mentioned, the big three, enzymes, pH and bile flow. Those things are not identified by the test, but it's extremely important, and they can help with getting into prioritizing what's really going to help you overall, what your needs. So this is not just a bacterial test, it's also a fungi test. And it's not that people think of fungi as a negative thing, or we don't want fungus overall, but there is a balance in our body of bacteria and in the fungal community. There's certain balance of the viral community in our body, believe it or not, that keeps our immune system actually healthy and responding properly. But this test measures the bacterial, and it's the only test that will actually measure both bacteria and fungi. So Dr. Gunum was the one that coined the microbiome, and they communicate, believe it or not. They have their own social network. They're texting each other back and forth and how to work together. But they essentially create communities where they can adapt to the environment, and essentially, whether it's good or bad. And when it's the bad ones get together and there's an overgrowth of them, then they're not all working in a good way. And that's really just being mean to each other and mean to your body. But this test will give you the insight to what those levels are. Without this test, it's impossible really to understand how that balance is affecting your health overall. So it's more than bacteria. We talked about that separately, but they're a communal garden. Start to get into some things. There's really fancy words as far as how they communicate, but they've been able to measure it, and they understand that the researchers know that our body is communicating within itself. It's kind of weird. So the microbes perform a lot of functions in our body, essentially, but what we want to get to is homeostasis. We want to be able to create a sense of balance. So if it's something is going off too much, we're having too much stress in our body, our gut will respond appropriately and be able to get us back to homeostasis to be able to be healthy again, because it goes both ways. Let me see which slides we're on. So it goes both ways. So stress, I think it's on here. Yeah, level of stress can contribute to dysbiosis in your gut. So your gut and the bacterial environment in there can affect your hormones levels, and it can affect your stress because it's affecting your brain. But it goes the other way around as well. Your brain, the amount of stress that you have in your lifestyle, even there's research showing that on a 4-hour flight, your gut microbiome will actually change. Not for the better. It's short-lived, but that's the whole point. If you had a healthy microbiome, you're going to be able to adapt and get back to that healthy, balance again. But it does go both ways. So just mentioning that what contributes to dysbiosis, it's well documented that antibiotic use will definitely affect your microbiome for the negative. Acid-reducing drugs, NSAIDs, like taking Advil on a regular basis, that will help, that'll affect in a negative way. And corticosteroids, diabetes drugs, there's a lot of them. And then the dysbiosis already was on this, but essentially, most of you eat junk food, you're gonna have a bad output. Even though it tastes good, a lot of birthday parties and barbecues, this time of year. So I'm not saying that we all have to be perfect, but if you are able to establish a healthy microbiome, and then you have those days where you're not going to be perfect, because it's all about quality of life. You want to get to that quality of life so you can enjoy the moments that you're in a social environment. You'll be able to get back to normal much faster, and then you'll be able to create that homeostasis. So when you have the insult of a bad diet for that day or that stress, then if you have a healthy microbiome, you're going to be able to get back to normal much faster, instead of a cascade effect where you continuously go down that road. Where if you have a bad gut, obviously because it's been years of insult, years of stress, and it's never been addressed, then it's just those are the things that are creating more inflammation, more toxicity, and more hormonal changes, and overall a lot of problems. So exercise, there's a lot of things that you can do to help get you back on the right track. With this test, you also go through a dysbiosis risk checklist. That's just a part of the process. You'll actually answer a questionnaire by going through this to see where you are. And I've already talked about that. So what's the report overview from standard process? So essentially you're gonna get a snapshot. You're gonna get a snapshot in time of what is your microbiome, what's the health look like, what's the bacterial levels, what's the fungi levels, and how does it actually relate? Because there's studies that, there's a microbiome project going on right now. Biome's actually working with standard process, is the largest fungi collection lab next to the CDC. So it's a really well-established lab. We have a ton of research that goes along with that. So we analyze that next to all the data that we have, available for that. So it was able to give you the ideal ranges and actionable insights because they have the data to show how you can change it. So we have dietary, lifestyle, and we have standard process and many other supplements that you'll get with the report that just help with, you'll get a report back, and it may be an herb that's going to help you with stress, because from the report, there's documented literature that stress is what's affecting that particular bacterial or fungus. So it's more going to be focusing on stress rather than just overall overgrowth, if that makes sense. So it's a home test kit. I already talked about that. Why do it? I think we've kind of brushed over many of those things very quickly, but most of the people think about gut issues. You have diarrhea, stools are not fully formed, constipation. If you have allergies, food sensitivities, that's definitely a very good reason to do it. But if you're generally walking around, if you have pain, inflammation, brain fog, just overall, if you want to just be the best you that you can be, having the insight of what is out of balance gives you that target. Because people, go to Dr. Google. Okay, so now that I know that I can make changes, I'm just going to take a probiotic. But those probiotics may not have the right strain, and they may not have the clinical research associated with it to affect that specific bacteria that's out of balance, if that makes sense. Because we have so many species within our body, this helps you target and laser in and focus on actually getting results with what's going on with you, not just generally with general information overall. So it radically affects your overall health, far beyond the gut. I think we've kind of hit that one on the head too many times. So it's a home kit. We matched it against the National Institutes of Health database, microbiome project, I mentioned that. Comprehensive report. And the report, like I mentioned before, it's really important to kind of work hand in hand, with the office, so that way you can get very specific into what's the priority as well. Because sometimes it's too much to make too many changes too quickly for many people. It's just, we're living in society that it's just hard to make those lifestyle changes, because we have a schedule, we have a certain demanding job, or whatever it is that's going on with you. You can get into more of a specific priority of knowing what you can focus on, what you can change, and then create a plan, and actually have phases and know what you're going to be working on and know how you're going to target certain things and get results. Because it's not just about changing the numbers on the report, That's the inside of the kit. So like you're going to get a report that you'll be able to see very easily, you know, what's low, what's normal, what's high. Yes, we want to make those changes. We want to bring them into the range where they're going to all be green smiley faces. But it's about actually how you feel, increasing your quality of life, making changes that you're going to notice in your body, and that you're going to have the people around you that are going to notice. They're going to say, "What are you doing?" And then, you know, the idea is not to keep it to yourself. If you feel better, if you make changes in your life and you can actually see the results, and you can have more vitality in the day, and you can actually go through the day with more energy, more clarity, and you feel like you are in charge of your health, because essentially that's what we want. We want you to give this as tools to give you insight to be able to take charge of your own health. You know, we don't want to always rely on Dr. Google. That's the whole point of working with this office, is so that you get knowledge through the process, that you can actually say, you know what, I know how to make these changes with you. It's going to help me essentially guide through the process, because it's not always easy to make long-lasting changes on your own. Has anybody ever tried something and not stuck with it? Yeah, like, you know, there's challenges that come up in our life, so it's good to be able to get targeted focus, make the changes, feel better, and, you know, generate a plan that's going to help keep you on a path of really just overall health and wellness. So this is just more, yeah, next time. Appreciate it.
So I'd like to just share with you what we're doing today, which is